Welcome back to Philosophy and Ethics in Games, the series where I break down the stories in some of our favorite games and ask the tough questions to figure out what is right and what is wrong. I'm Josh Bearheart Hawk, and today we're closing the time loop in the final chapter of Life is Strange Season 1. In case you missed any of the previous episodes in the Philosophy and Ethics series, I've linked a playlist in the description below. As I continue to break down this and other games, I'll add new videos to the playlist so you can find them all in one place. The final episode of Life is Strange Season 1 picks up shortly after the end of the previous episode and brings Max into the dark room, face to face with the actual villain of the story, Mr. Jefferson. She's tied to a chair and Victoria is lying a few feet away, unconscious. I have to be completely honest here. This is really the part where the game just jumped the shark for me, and there isn't a whole lot I'm going to be able to discuss when it comes to these opening scenes. Jefferson seemed like a suspicious jerk to me from the first time I saw him, but he's just so over-the-top evil in this stretch that I had to question what the game was trying to accomplish while checking myself for whiplash. We'll find out later that Nathan was responsible for Rachel Amber and what ultimately happened to Kate, with Jefferson more or less acting as a role model for the younger man. But now we're supposed to believe that Mr. Jefferson has gone from simply kidnapping and photographing girls to killing people in a spree situation? Max is able to use a couple of photos to rewind time, taking herself to an earlier moment in the room before finally getting a glimpse of the selfie from the first episode. The one that she took in the classroom before all of this craziness with the time travel started. And we're going back to the beginning to nab him before this whole thing really kicked off. When playing through this for the first time, I was under the impression that this would be the ultimate end. Max is able to message David and let him know who the bad guy is, and we're able to make sure that Kate knows that she has friends that can help her through what she's dealing with. In reality, that should have been that. We're even able to stand up to Victoria and open her eyes to the damage that she's doing to others, while putting Jefferson on notice as we hand in Max's entry for the Everyday Heroes contest. By the end of the fast-forwarded week, Jefferson and Nathan have been nabbed, with Chloe's life being saved in the process. Max won the contest, and we find ourselves on a plane headed to San Francisco with Principal Wells. I thought this was the end of a short finale episode, where we wrapped up everything in a nice bow and learned a lesson about being more assertive and being a better friend along the way. Boy, was I wrong. Max gets a phone call from Chloe while mingling at the art show in San Francisco, with her friend panicking as a massive storm barrels into Arcadia Bay. It turns out the vision of the tornado that Max had to start this whole thing is coming true, and now Chloe is going to die along with the whole town if Max doesn't do something. Using her photo in the exhibit, Max goes back in time once more, altering time by destroying her prize-winning photo and landing herself back in the dark room with Jefferson yet again. Is your head hurting from all of this time travel stuff? Because mine sure is. To make matters worse, getting out of this new situation is a little more complicated because you have to choose just the right words with Jefferson, especially since there are no more photos to use for time travel, since Jefferson apparently destroyed Max's journal and all of her photos with it. I spent way too long trying to piece together what I needed to say, and then trying to figure out what to do when David showed up to rescue me, and I was just begging for the game to end by the time I'd gotten free. Before tracking down Warren so we can get the photo that he took of us at the Vortex Club party, you remember the brief moment where he stopped us for a conveniently timed selfie? We have the chance to make amends with David for misjudging him in all the timelines, and we have the first real ethical dilemma of the episode. Well, as ethical as we can get in a world where our choices are reversible and have no real consequences to speak of. Max tells David that Jefferson shot Chloe in the junkyard, because that apparently happened in this timeline as well. And David pulls out his gun and caps Jefferson then and there. Here's the deal. Normally, shooting an unconscious, restrained man would be ethically dubious at best. By most measures, he should face some kind of trial that would result in a jail sentence and yada yada yada. However, in this circumstance, we know for a fact all the things he has done, and we know that there is likely no stopping him from committing future crimes of this nature should he be given even half a chance. Something I haven't talked about much here on the channel is the criminal justice system, or at least the idea of actual justice. See, justice means that the person or people who were wronged are made whole. This might mean some kind of monetary compensation or other kind of correction, and is rarely actually possible in the system we have. What we think of as justice is actually retribution or vengeance. It's the old idea of an eye for an eye. If someone does something wrong, breaks a law or accepted norm, they incur what we consider a debt to society. That debt to society might be considered paid through a jail sentence or other means, but it rarely, if ever, makes the person or persons who were actually harmed whole again. This system can make some sense in a way, as the idea of being penalized might deter some people from committing crimes or perpetrating harm. But it is far from perfect, and it doesn't actually work as intended most of the time. In an ideal system, we would focus on fixing the root causes of specific crimes and provide actual rehabilitation for those who break the rules so they can remain as productive members of society. That being said, some people just do not play well with others. People like Jefferson. He doesn't care about anyone other than himself, and there is likely no rehabilitation in the world that will make it safe to have him walking about in society. The crimes he's committed, the things he's done, cannot be made up for. The people he's hurt can never be made whole with any kind of justice or payback. And in order to prevent him from hurting others in the future, there is only one solution. Now, it does get a little complicated here because David could face legal consequences and will likely live with some kind of emotional trauma from the whole ordeal in general. But I wasn't about to rewind time again just to save Jefferson. Leaving the dark room, we're able to track down Warren in town at the Two Wheels Diner. And while there were a ton of chances to help people along the way, I wound up pushing through and just making my way to the diner because at this point in the story, it just seems like nothing really matters. Max has gone back and forth in time so many times that I can't even tell when a moment matters and when it's just something to throw away and do over. Everyone in this town is understandably freaking out, but with how slowly the storm, or at least the tornado, seems to be moving, it seems crazy that they weren't all able to get out or take proper shelter. Even the people in the diner, Warren, Joyce, and Frank, among others, seem more or less just chill with the idea that a tornado is bearing down on them. They aren't trying to get underground or to flee, and I have to question if they even want to survive the storm at this point. And this is also where we get the first hint of something that will take up the majority of the rest of the episode and make me pull what little hair I have left out. We have the chance to tell Warren that Max started the storm, and what the actual This game has really thrown me for a loop in a million different ways. But now we have to jump into the real meat and potatoes because I've just about had it. The idea here is that saving Chloe in the very beginning was the catalyst for the storm because of something to do with cause and effect or chaos theory, as Warren so eloquently explains to us. It feels like something that was just shoehorned in as a way to pretend that any of the choices that we've made to this point have mattered in any way. And as far as I'm concerned, the devs can take the poorly written, so many plot lines you can barely keep up, story, and get out of town. So far, we've had the fish out of water trope, with Max in a new school and trying to find a social group to fit into, a long neglected but rekindled friendship between childhood best friends, a time travel storyline where we have the chance to change decisions and do things over to our heart's content, except for when it mattered with Kate, an abusive stepfather who is also dealing with unresolved PTSD, and the tendency to dig into conspiracy-level stuff with a fine-tooth comb while still missing the obvious clues. A teacher who's paired up with a student who just happens to be a member of the family that runs the town to carry out atrocious acts. An alcoholic principal who might or might not be embezzling money from the school. A photography contest that we don't even have the option to do anything with on the first go-round. And an untold number of other subplots that I can't even keep up with. And now, we apparently have control of the weather, because the writers took the concept of the butterfly effect too literally. After giving Warren a goodbye kiss and going back to the night of the party, Max has to convince Chloe to help her take down Jefferson through yet another time travel mission. And after a brief photo montage, we find ourselves on the beach next to Chloe, watching a tornado inch toward Arcadia Bay. After a brief discussion with Chloe, where it's insinuated that Rachel Amber had something to do with the whole adventure, the pair of girls start heading for the lighthouse. But Max barely makes it a few steps before she passes out, and now we enter the guilt trip dream portion of the game, and I'm just going to skip right over all of it. This was the most infuriating part of the episode for me, because in my eyes, it didn't add anything at all to the narrative. We rehashed some of the prior choices, and laid out a basic canon timeline, and Max reinforced to herself that she was somehow responsible for all of the chaos because she used her powers that she didn't ask for and wasn't given any rules for. Seriously, Max was handed these powers after having what amounted to a weird dream in her art class, and the whole thing was presented as a way to save someone's life. She did what any rational, caring person would do and saved Chloe's life in the bathroom before going on to use what seemed like a random gift. And the thing is, if she hadn't saved Chloe, if she'd let Nathan shoot her, Nathan and Jefferson would have been taken down in episode 1. Nathan would have been discovered in the bathroom, gun in hand as he stood over Chloe's body. He would have ratted out Jefferson, and none of the other chaos that we've witnessed would have happened the way it did. We know that because we'll have an option here shortly to change the past again or leave it as it is, but we're not there yet. At a very basic level, the writers want us to believe that the act of saving Chloe somehow caused the storm. That Max doing the very human thing, taking advantage of the mysterious power she was granted, was the wrong move. And what was the purpose of this whole experiment? Is there some god sitting back and laughing as Max has to go through hell, seeing her friend potentially die over and over while wielding the strange power to fix it every time? It's completely senseless because if she never got the power, the perpetrators of the crime that really kickstarted this whole thing would be taken down just the same. And having a tornado take out the entire town based on that one instinctive action is about the dumbest piece of writing I've seen in any of these games that I've talked about. The final choice in the game wound up actually being a no-brainer for me because of that fact alone. I refused to accept that the tornado was tied to Chloe being saved, and I refused to use Max's time travel to go back and let Chloe die. Yeah, the final decision in the game, the thing that we have spent 5 episodes working up to, is to either go back in time again using the photo we took of the butterfly to let Nathan shoot her and play things out from there, or let the tornado destroy Arcadia Bay and apparently wipe out everyone in town in the process. For me, as much as I enjoyed the banter between Chloe and Max, this decision was more out of spite than anything. The tornado should have been an omen, not a real thing. The game should have ended when we figured out it was Jefferson and went back in time to get him and Nathan caught with an early tip to David. If they really wanted to play up the choices, they should have allowed us to build a relationship with Kate and Chloe, both, and then put us in a situation where we had time to save just one of them as our rewind ability stopped working just when we needed it the most. Anything, literally anything, would have been better than this ending in my eyes. And if you like the game, I don't fault you, and I don't expect my opinion to be shared by you. We each like what we like, and the opinions that I share in my videos are my own. I'll share insight and information to tie the games that I talk about to the real world, but in the end, this game was just too much for me. And I want to really stress something here, because I've seen a few breakdowns of Life is Strange as I've been working on forming my thoughts for the series. A few examples of the kind of things that a lot of the game's critics seem to point out is the unrealistic dialogue, or even the campy indie music that it uses, or some of the weirder moments the game has, and I really don't mind any of those things. Yeah, the dialogue was a bit odd at times, and some of the situations presented were a little over the top, but I can forgive those things pretty easily. Some of them are design choices, and some are just little flaws in the writing that you just kind of accept when you're playing games. Even the best games have moments where you just have to kind of go along with it for the sake of the story. But to me, that's the most important part right there. The story. You can have mostly passable characters that get along well, and good or bad dialogue, and even have subpar world building. But if the story is broken, the whole thing falls apart. And a large part of the story falls on the shoulders of how it ends. I was irritated several times with the way things were going in my playthrough of Life is Strange, but I was also ready to forgive a lot of those transgressions and just move on until they presented me with that final choice. Pretending like it all just went back to the decision to save Chloe in the beginning, a decision that we had no choice but to make, meant that we never really had any agency in the game. Sure, we could rewind and make different decisions, say or do something different to get a different outcome, but the main thread of the game, a storm coming to wipe out the town, was something forced into being as a way to force a choice that doesn't even make sense in the first place. Just imagine for a second, the rewind ability doesn't fail on the roof and we're able to save Kate no matter what. She's going through a difficult time, and we spend some time with her between bouts of working with Chloe to solve Rachel Amber's disappearance. We figure things out, nail Jefferson and Nathan, and get the trip to San Francisco as the winners of the Everyday Heroes contest. Returning from that trip, we meet up with Chloe and Kate, introducing our two friends and thinking everything is fine. Maybe there's a car crash or some other incident that endangers both of them at the same time, and we find out in that moment that the rewind power has stopped working, so we can't go back and stop the event from happening. And there's only time to save one or the other. Maybe by that time we've even got to know Kate's parents pretty well, and we know how much she means to them. Now we have an actual ethical dilemma. Do we save Chloe, who would have died anyway at Nathan's hands in the beginning, or do we save Kate, who's already been through so much and has been a positive light in the world in her own way? At this point, I've kind of gone on longer than I meant to, but I'm interested in hearing your thoughts in the comments. Was I too harsh on Life is Strange? If you enjoyed the video, make sure to leave a like, and don't forget to subscribe to Lost in Games here on YouTube so you don't miss any videos in the Philosophy and Ethics in Games series. If you want to help out in other ways, I've got a Patreon and channel memberships, and signing up for either helps me get new games for future breakdowns and hardware to store those games on, while granting you cool perks like having your name on the screen and early access to videos. I want to thank you all for watching. Have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you in the next one.